Hello, good evening, life leaders. Today we'll be talking about First Samuel chapter 26, when an old problem returns, because it appeared to be that chapter 26 is deja vu, partially of chapter 24, when Shaul again began chasing David. This was our topic a couple of weeks ago when you are so close to taking revenge. So you remember the story that David was hiding in the forest and the Ziphites reported to Shaul that he was there hiding. And because of that, Shaul chased them. David was hiding inside the cave. And it happened to be that Shaul, trying to relieve himself, went there by himself. And David was almost able to kill him. But of course, he didn't. And he cut a corner of the robe of Shaul, and that became his evidence that David spared him because God has told him not to touch his anointed one. The key verse in First Samuel chapter 26 is this: the Lord rewards everyone for their righteousness and faithfulness. The Lord delivered you into my hands today, and I would not lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. So David lived out this principle. That's why he didn't kill Shaul for the second time that he had the opportunity to kill him. So the main lesson for today is trust in the Lord for your protection and his plans for you. Because David knew that God's plan for him was to be the next king. He's just waiting for the moment that Shaul would finish his term. And so he wanted to keep his track record clean. Be faithful to him and do not commit evil against divinely appointed leaders. So we'll learn a lot of similar lessons in chapter 26 from what we learned in chapter 24. So as usual, I'll have a few points to share today coming from this chapter. Letter A, God can test you with previously resolved problems. So David's victory in chapter 24 was not a lucky one. God's hand was upon him. Seeing that Shaul's anger has reignited and was chasing him again, David braced himself for the challenge. This time, David was quite prepared. Well, he was really prepared way back then, but he was cornered. But this time, he would be on the offense. The Ziphites, remember, these are the same people that reported King Shaul where David was hiding in chapter 24. The Ziphites went to Shaul, to Gibeah, and said, "Is not David hiding on the hill of Hachilah, which faces Yeshimon?" So Shaul went down to the desert of Ziph with his 3,000 select Israelite troops to search there for David. So here we go again. Remember, in chapter 24, Shaul also brought 3,000 men just to look for one person, and that's David. But David then had about 600 people with him. Why did this happen? Why do old problems resurface or return or reoccur? It's because certain people tried to reignite the anger of Shaul against David. So David did not do anything wrong against the Ziphites. So why were they trying to snitch where David was when he wasn't hiding anymore at this time? So the Ziphites might have an agenda against David. We don't know. Or they just want to gain the favor of Shaul. Maybe that's one of the reasons. It seems that the Ziphites reinstigated the animosity between Shaul and David. And sometimes you will experience the same things, brothers and sisters. For example, you're part of a group of friends and you had a conflict with one of them. And one of the friends, instead of helping you get reconciled, brought back the memory and the pain that one of your friends had, whom with you had in conflict. And then somehow that brought back the bad feeling again, the anger and the bitterness. And so it resurfaces again. You thought that this was over. So this is what happened probably to Shaul. Shaul saw another opportunity to put down his rival, which at this time wasn't his rival anymore. He already acknowledged that David would be the future king, and he was hoping to turn things around in his favor. But he knew this was not part of God's plan. So maybe again, the evil spirit was bringing back to Shaul all his anger against David. So don't be surprised when these things happen to you, to us, because God can test you with previously resolved problems. You know, this also happens among married couples. When one of them made a mistake and then they got reconciled, and then when they had another conflict, the old mistakes are raised up again. So this is one of the things that we have to learn to get over and not to bring back those old mistakes that we have made. But in this case, David didn't make any mistake. So similar to chapter 24, verse 2, Shaul was very serious in capturing David. So Shaul was tempted to chase David again when he saw another opportunity to take him down. So verse 3, so Shaul made his camp beside the road on the hill of Hakilah facing Yeshimon, but David stayed in the wilderness. When he saw that Shaul had followed him there, he sent out scouts and learned that Shaul had definitely arrived. So David was wondering, why is Shaul here? And he had 3,000 men with him. So Shaul and his men had positioned themselves very near David. So the only thing that David could think of is that Shaul was after him again. There could be no other reason for Shaul to be there because this was the desert. So David and his men did not expose themselves in the public. This is the wilderness. Actually, this is more wilderness. Right now, this is a desert. Well, the Israelites have restored this part of the desert. But way back then, this was not really a desert. This is more of a savanna during those times. It hasn't desertified at this time. So David must be wondering why Shaul was there with thousands of men again. So instead of sending some dignitaries or some representation to ask Shaul, King, is there anything we can do for you? Why are you here? Do you have any concern? But David was more careful about this. So that's why he sent scouts. He did not initiate communication with Shaul because he didn't know what could possibly happen. Again, David must be wondering why Shaul was with thousands of soldiers and they were there again, the same people. So probably they heard among them that the news that they were indeed looking for David. So David was being more careful at this time. Verse 5, then David set out and went to the place where Shaul had camped. He saw where Shaul and Avner, son of Ner, the commander of the army, had lain down. Shaul was lying inside the camp with the army encamped around him. David then asked Ahimelech the Hittite and Avishai the Zeruiah, Joab's brother, who will go down into the camp with me to Shaul? I'll go with you, said Avishai. So let's go back to verse 5. David, being very careful about the situation, went to investigate the camp and analyzed their setup. There must be a reason why they're there. They're not just there for training or whatever. They are there for an attack. They were at the side of the road at the hill. So they were positioning themselves. So David knew he had to be careful. And he understood, he realized that Shaul was very secured. Unlike before in chapter 24, when he went to the cave, the guards did not do their jobs well. They didn't look at the cave if somebody was there before Shaul went there to relieve himself. They were about to sleep. They were preparing for the next day. But at this time, they're making sure that Shaul was surrounded by men. So he was really secured. So no stranger or enemy would be able to penetrate like the wall of soldiers to protect the king would come there. Okay, so Shaul was protected in the camp when he rested in their midst. So this was already at night. David was planning to do something. That's what we find here in verse 6. But unlike in chapter 24, where David was more defensive when he was hiding in the cave, he was taking a more offensive stance when he decided to go into the camp of Shaul. Now, that was a brave plan. You don't just go in there, especially when he realized that Shaul was really protected. Soldiers were surrounding him there. You cannot just pass through the soldiers without being noticed. He was very secure there. They were doing their job. But David showed his braveness here when he decided to go to the camp. Now, Avishai took the challenge that David dared, and he dared to go with him there. We see here Avishai as one of the most trusted people that David would have. David's plan of going into the camp of Shaul with only one companion, Avishai, was a very risky move. Now we will wonder, why would David do this? Perhaps he asked the Lord for some guidance, and we'll find out in the next few verses. Let me share to you 3 important advices that we can learn from the first point. That God can test you with previously resolved problems, first, do not presume and do not be surprised when old issues resurface. You have to be careful because this probably happened with you before. It can cause you potential problems. All right. Imagine this. If you have resolved certain problems in the past and they can come back and you have to be prepared for them. Imagine if there are issues with your life that you didn't resolve. That would be a thorn on your side. Just recently, another pastor who's been pastoring for several decades, I think about 4 decades from his church, one of the largest churches in America, was forced to resign. And within those years that he's been pastoring, he said to his leaders in his church that in the past, he had this inappropriate relationship with a young woman. And now it appeared to be that this was not just a mere young woman. This was a 12-year-old girl, a minor. And so he was forced to resign when the elders realized that it was worse than what he confessed to them before because he didn't really resolve the problem before. So that's worse. Again, if you think that resolved problems can potentially be a future problem again, how much more if you didn't resolve a problem in the past? Okay. Do not complain when you have to face them again, because again, God is testing us. And do not get upset. Get the help of a friend when trying to resolve the problem. So David, in this case, he had Avishai with him to help him out. Letter B, you must be brave and smart if you take the challenge. Okay, Lord, here we go again. But this time, I'm not going to be on the defensive side. I'm going to be preparing for this and I'm going to put this to stop. Something like that went in the mind of David. So this is verses 7 to 12. David dealt with the problem of Shaul even before the king had the opportunity to take the step ahead of him. While they were resting in the camp, David made this move. He was not about to be cornered or trapped inside a cave or whatever part there in the wilderness. He will reverse the situation compared to chapter 24 and he will penetrate the camp of Shaul. That was a very brave move. So let's see what happened there. Verse 7, David and Avishai went to the army by night, and there was Shaul lying asleep inside the camp with his spear stuck in the ground near his head. Avner and the soldiers were lying around him. So imagine that David had to tiptoe not to awaken the soldiers, and he had to really, it's like passing through a maze. Maybe there were not enough really spaces to walk through, but he was able to do that. Avishai said to David, today, God has delivered your enemy into your hands. Now let me pin him to the ground with one thrust of the spear. I won't strike him twice. Now, you would imagine how can they converse at this time when they are sleeping that they could be potentially be heard. But it's like this. David and Avishai stayed all night until Shaul and his men were off guard. So if we could imagine, maybe this happened in the middle of the evening. So if they'll be sleeping maybe about 7 or 8 p.m. when it's already dark, and they would be waking up at about shortly before dawn at about 5 o'clock. Let's say David had to stay a few more hours to make sure they were in their deep sleep, maybe at about 12 in the midnight before they went in there. That was a long wait, but they had to be patient. They had to be smart. Certainly, Shaul's night guards were negligent for failing to secure the king when David was able to get near the king. Well, actually, how can this possibly happen? In verse 12, it will explain. The Lord had a hand on this. That's why David was able to penetrate the camp and they were not awakened. But here's the point. David's braveness was extraordinary. Now, just because David did this doesn't mean that we should also do the same. All right? He had the guidance of God and he was a commander. He was a soldier. He was a brave one. So if you're in a conflict, if God tells you you can be on the offense in a sense that you will get one step ahead of whoever you're in conflict with, maybe that's good. But be careful, like it appears to be that you're charging in his territory. It's like this. Maybe you've seen this in the movie. No? A woman was upset with a man, and the woman went to the workplace of the man while everybody's busy and caused a scene, a commotion. Now, that would be very unethical. So you don't just do this. David didn't do that. He went there at night when he had the upper hand over Shaul. David's skill was elite. He and Avishai was able to get near Shaul. Now, this is sort of the thing that bothered David. What Avishai said here. He said, "Today God has delivered your enemy to your hands. Let me pin him to the ground with one thrust of the spear." Avishai must have thought that he and David was there to actually kill him. Because unlike in this case when they were cornered in the cave, the only way that they could survive is if they could hostage or kill Shaul before they were discovered inside the cave. But this time, they went there in the middle of the night. So what could possibly be the reason why David brought me here with him but to kill Shaul? That's the only thing that I could imagine. Was that the actual reason why David charged there in the middle of the night? Let's see. We see Avishai very zealous for David that he wanted to do it for David, to kill Shaul, to take the victory on behalf of David. I'm going to kill this man for you. Let's look at how the men of David urged David to kill Shaul in chapter 24, verse 4. The men said, "This is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish." So it's the same thing. So I guess Avishai would be wondering, this cannot happen twice, that we're not going to kill Shaul. But look at how he wanted to kill Shaul. He wanted to do it for David. And he planned to kill him not in a very violent way. He said, "I'm just going to strike him once, pin him to the ground." That's the plan. Unlike other killings or murders, sometimes they stab them about 30 times or they behead the enemy to make sure they're all dead. Or, yung guns for hire, they shoot them several times and before they escape, they make sure that the target is dead. But this time, he's just saying, just one strike. I only need one strike so that we won't be heard. And it won't appear that we killed him so violently, that we were so merciless. I'm not going to do it that way. So for Avishai, it was tempting to end the problem when the opportunity was there. So what did David say to him? Verse 9, but David said to Avishai, "Don't destroy him. Who can lay a hand on the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? As surely as the Lord lives," he said, "the Lord himself will strike him, or his time will come and he will die, or he will go into battle and perish. But the Lord forbid that I should lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. Now get the spear and water jug that are near his head and let's go." So what's happening here? Again, David refused to kill Shaul. And he used the same reasoning as before in chapter 24. David did not want Avishai to kill the king. He stood by the same principle that he said in chapter 24, verses 6 and 7. He said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lay a hand on him, for he is the Lord's anointed." So with these words, David sharply rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Shaul. So this was when they were in the cave in chapter 24. Look at the reasoning of David here. The anointing of the Lord upon rulers such as Shaul, even when they turn evil, when they turn bad, must be respected because this is respecting God himself. Everyone must respect whom God has appointed there. And if God was the one who appointed him there, only God can take him away there. No man has the authority to take away the leader that God has appointed. Only the one who appointed can remove him. That's the idea. David would soon benefit from this as he would not be killed by his rebel son Absalom, who will be usurping his throne in 2 Samuel chapter 15. All right? So imagine if David did this, he killed Shaul. When somebody rebelled against David, and we know that happened, as I just mentioned ago, in 2 Samuel chapter 15, his son temporarily dethroned him from his position as king of Israel. Absalom could have done the same. Well, you've killed our previous king. Now, if that is a good way of dethroning somebody, maybe I can kill my own father and I could reign as the next king. In fact, when you read the book of Kings, this is how some of the kings that the northern kingdom of Israel had, they would dethrone the previous king by murdering them. And the same murderers were murdered by other men who dethroned them as well. So it's a cycle. It's a violent cycle of removing the leader through rebellion, through murder, not through the legal way or not through the way of the Lord. It's the Lord who put the leader there, and only the Lord can remove the leader there. So let's go back to chapter 26. David warned Abishai that he would be guilty of murder if he kills the king. That will be murder, especially that they cannot appeal to self-defense because Shaul was asleep and they were the ones who went to their camp. So how can that be justifiable? Killing the king while he was sleeping would be murder. And how else could you interpret that? Nothing else as murder. Verse 10, he explains what can possibly happen. How can God dethrone Shaul? David showed Abishai his faith in the Lord, that God would soon give him justice in God's own terms. And what were the terms? So here in verse 10, you will see that David enumerated three possible scenarios, possible ways that God could avenge for David. And in all of those, David would not be involved. Look at this. The Lord will strike him directly. Okay? Or second, his time will come and he will die. He will finish his term in his old age, and that's fine if God decides that he will rule as king for a longer time. Or he will go into battle and perish. So that's the third possible way that Shaul would be dethroned. He would be killed in battle. Now, this is also somehow prophetic because this is exactly how Shaul would be dethroned. He will die in battle. In chapter 30, I believe, of 1 Samuel. So David would not be involved there. His hands would be clean. It would not be said that David murdered Shaul and dethroned him. Okay. So in verse 11, the Lord forbid. He's appealing to the Lord's authority that I should lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. He could do it, but he shouldn't be doing it. So in chapter 24, verse 5, David cut only the corner of the robe of Shaul. So this time, he instructed Abishai to take Shaul's weapon, the spear that was just near his head, and the water jug as evidence that they were actually there. David thought these two pieces of evidence would be good enough to convince them that they had the upper hand while they were sleeping. Abishai, again, might have wondered why David brought him in there without killing the king. And he could have thought, is this going to be a failed mission? Is this going to be a show of cowardice for David? Or did he admire David more for refusing to yield to the temptation of killing King Shaul? And it's probably that last one. It wasn't a failed mission. David wasn't a coward, but David was very admirable to stand on the principle that nobody should kill the king. So the Lord may have permitted David to penetrate the camp, but not allowed him to kill the king. So you need to know your boundaries, right? So verse 12, so David took the spear and water jug near Shaul's head and they left. No one saw or knew about it, nor did anyone wake up. They were all sleeping because the Lord had put them into a deep sleep. So there is the miraculous side of this. That's why it was easy for David and Abishai to penetrate their camp, talk to each other, and still be not traced that they were there. So the spear near Shaul's head was actually unique. Okay? You could know if that spear really belonged to Shaul. Now, however, it appears if soon David would say, I have your spear. What if Shaul had his spare spear? Well, I have my spear here. Look, it has my mark. This is the spear of the king. So what you're talking about, maybe you just made the dummy there. You know how my spear looked like, and you made one like this, like that, and pretended that you have my spear. So that's why they took another evidence, the water jug, so that no lie would spread that David was making up such things. The water jug was also unique. That was the water jug of Shaul. No other person can drink from that water jug. Imagine the spear, you can carry that. They're soldiers, they know how to carry the weapons. But, I think the water jug was heavier to carry, especially when it's filled with water. Well, anyway, having two evidences, with David and Abishai, with them, the spear and the water jug, was more compelling to convince Shaul that, in fact, they were there in the middle of the night. Let me show you a video for a moment. If you could imagine, it was really very difficult for David and Abishai to take the spear of Shaul because they would be really secured. But again, the verse explains to us that the Lord put them into deep sleep. So that's why David and Abishai was able to penetrate the camp. So David and Abishai must have felt quite relieved for being able to escape undetected. So what we see here is that the author of this book, First Samuel, made it very clear that the Lord was aiding David and Abishai. That was the miraculous part here. Now, if in case you try to get a step ahead in resolving a conflict that you have, that you would be going ahead, you would be initiating the contact and try to resolve this again. Be careful not to imitate what David did, okay? Because God's hand was upon them when he was doing it. Okay, that he took some of the possession and tried to point Shaul that we were so close into killing you, but we didn't do that. Okay, so number one, you must be brave and smart if you take the challenge. Dealing with old problems may need a new approach in solving them again. And you can take the first step. So instead of waiting for the soldiers of Shaul to find them, before they were able to do that, David went to them and with Abishai. Now, their rules of engagement or ethics of war were different during the ancient times compared to what we have right now in the Geneva Convention. So don't just take things from the scriptures and apply it in the modern times. All right. Again, this is a military conflict, so don't apply it into practical life here. All right. But you see, the point here is David took the high road by not murdering the king. Number two, be clear with God's mission for you for the opportunities he gives you. So God gave David the opportunity to get near the king. And that was it. And get, of course, some evidence. The mission was to get some possession of the king as evidence that David was there. Number three, trust God that he will be with you as you retake the test. So in this case, God made Shaul and all his men fall into deep sleep so that David and Abishai can fulfill their mission. Okay. So when God tells you, you can resolve this conflict again, trust God, he will help you. Letter C, you can confront your opponents with convicting words. Verses 13 to 20. David took his turn to challenge King Shaul and Abner even before they could position themselves against him. So how did David confront Shaul while they were there and chasing him again? Then David crossed over to the other side and stood on top of the hill some distance away. There was a wide space between them. He called out to the army and to Abner, the son of Ner, aren't you going to answer me, Abner? Ner. Abner replied, who are you who calls to the king? So to make sure that David could address the king, he went, of course, in a safer distance. He went to a secured place where he could speak to the king and shout to Abner. So standing on the hill was a good place to shout and be heard. So David called both on the king and Abner, and he wanted Abner to know that he was there. Abner, you're responsible for the king. He wanted Abner to know that he was a failure and shame on him. So after escaping and standing in a secured hill, David called out to the king and Abner to their shame. Okay. Now David addresses Abner. Verse 15, David said, you're a man, aren't you? And who is like you in Israel? Why didn't you guard your lord the king? Sounds like he was mocking Abner, right? Someone came to destroy your lord the king. What you have done is not good. As surely as the Lord lives, you and your men must die because you did not guard your master, the Lord's anointed. Look around you. Where are the king's spears and water jug that were near his head? So imagine the surprise of Abner to find out what really was happening. Now, like this, mockery may not be the appropriate way to confront your enemies. Remember, these are military men. It happens in sports, mockery. But if you are onion skinned, you will take that personally. But you see, when you're playing basketball, when somebody's trying to bully you and sort of the things, you must be strong enough to stand to ignore the jeers of the crowd or of the opponent, but yung ano yung pambabraso niya, yung ganon. Be tough, especially in military. You know, the war language is something that civilians cannot really bear. War language is different. So remember, these are men and pride is at stake. So when you're applying this in your personal life, don't imitate this part. Sabi, why didn't you guard the Lord my king? So David convicted and shamed Abner for his failure to secure the king. He was responsible. Verse 16. Now, see, David was correct here that Abner was a failure. Shaul should execute Abner for his failure. Right? But of course, Shaul cannot do it there because he'd lose some security men. David challenged Abner to look for the king's possessions, which is the spear and the jug. So King Shaul and Abner must have been stunned at David's challenge. All of a sudden at night, he was there challenging them. Now, how could he have known that the spear and the jug were there? And why those items were missing? That's the puzzling thing. Verse 17, Shaul recognized David's voice and said, "Is that your voice, David, my son?" Something very similar, chapter 24, verse 16. When David finished saying these words, Shaul asked, "Is that your voice, David, my son?" And he wept aloud. This was in the episode in the cave. Verse 8, David replied, "Yes, it is, my lord the king." And he added, "Why is my lord pursuing his servant? What have I done? And what wrong am I guilty of?" Now, I think at this time, unlike in chapter 24, where David bowed his head and he humbled himself before the king, this time, I think David was more challenging, more accusing Shaul. All right? Now, this looked deja vu for King Shaul. He was surprised again to find out that he could have been killed again by David. And he was spared once more. And he felt so embarrassed by this. So Shaul called David, "My son." So he's instead of calling him my enemy, he called him my son. You're part of me. Even though he already divorced David from Michal. So here in verse 18, David raised up his point. David questioned again Shaul for his unjust pursuit of him. And he was seeking for clarification. Why are you doing this? And he wanted to know what crime he's being accused of, because he could have addressed it in the right forum. Right? Verse 19. Now let my lord the king listen to his servant's words. If the Lord has incited you against me, then may he accept an offering. If, however, people have done it, may they be cursed before the Lord. They have driven me today from my share in the Lord's inheritance and have said, "Go serve other gods." What does this mean? So David was presenting his case before Shaul and all the men there. But he was addressing, of course, the king. This was very, again, brave of David to address the king in such a manner before all the people. It's because right now, it appears to be that David was accusing the king. Okay? So David let Shaul know that there could be only two possible reasons that he could think of why the king was chasing him. The first one was the valid reason. God is the reason. God told Shaul to arrest David. That's what it says there. If the Lord has incited you against me, what would be the resolution? Killing him? No. May he accept an offering. So that means David's recourse would be presenting an offering to God so that he could be forgiven. So why would he be executed? Death penalty is something that David is trying to avert here if he could present an offering. And Shaul needed to acknowledge that that is a possible resolution. But the second instance is, which is the actual reason, some people urged Shaul to catch him again. And we look at back in verse 1, it was the people of Ziph. So in this case, the pursuit was really unjust. So now David pleads for the Lord's justice against the Ziphites. But what you can see here is that somehow David was excusing Shaul as only being incited to chase him again, either by the Lord, by the Ziphites. He is saying, people have misled you. I cannot think God misleading you, but people have. So these people should be cursed. He didn't say, King Shaul, if you actually want to kill me, may you be cursed because you're unfair. You're unjust. No, the people who incited you, he could not accuse the king directly. So in fact, he's saying the Ziphites are guilty, not David or not Shaul. They have pushed him away, the Ziphites. They have driven me away from my share in the Lord's inheritance. They've said, go and serve other gods, because where will else David go but to the land of the ungodly? Okay? So they have pushed him away, effectively making him a Gentile. Now, do not let my blood fall to the ground far from the presence of the Lord. The king of Israel has come out to look for a flea, as one hunts a partridge in the mountains. So David is saying, I should not be executed. Please let me not be executed. Do not let my blood fall to the ground. But if ever it's not, shouldn't be far from the presence of the Lord, because the Lord is the real judge. So David was appealing to Shaul that if he wanted to execute him, let it be before God, because God is the ultimate judge. Do it before God. In other words, he was reminding Shaul of the righteous judgment of God. Now, if Shaul rightfully executes David, the king will be justified, certainly. But if not, Shaul would be guilty of shedding innocent blood. That's of David. Something similar what we have here in chapter 24, verses 14 to 15. Against whom has the king of Israel come out? Who are you pursuing? A dead dog and a flea? That's what David repeated here. So again, David humbles himself to Shaul by comparing himself to a small insect, a flea, or to a partridge. You know what a partridge is? It's a bird. So I'm no one. I'm not a threat. I'm not even a lion in the wilderness. I'm just a flea. I'm harmless. Why are you trying to kill me? You can confront your opponents with convicting words, and that's what David did here. While mockery is normal in war language and sadly in social media, speak to your opponent with enough respect so you can resolve the conflict. When speaking to your accusers, speak with conviction. Let them know that you really believe that you're innocent and the others are guilty. Showing them that the real judge is God and the guilty, showing them who the real judge is, and that's God, and who the guilty person truly is. In fact, Shaul was guilty. Do not incite people to anger again against the former opponent as the Ziphites did. Don't be the one who's to start conflict. All right? Finally, accept confession, offer peace, and glorify God. There are 5 verses left. The good news here is that King Shaul asked for forgiveness and David accepted it. So the incoming king reminded the incumbent king to fear the Lord. Verse 21, then Shaul said, I have sinned. Come back, David, my son, because you considered my life precious today. I will not try to harm you again. Surely I have acted like a fool and have been terribly wrong. So having been spared for the second time, the king acknowledged his sin. Now, you don't just see your commander in chief, before all the 3,000 men with him, humbling and accepting guilt before the opponent. He urged David to return. Maybe he wanted him to become the king's son-in-law again. We're not sure. Maybe that's what he intended to do. He promised to value David's life as David valued his. So Shaul admitted to be a fool. He took responsibility for his own actions. He didn't blame the Ziphites or anyone else. He was the one guilty. So remember the 5 languages of apology by Dr. Gary Chapman and Jennifer Thomas. He said, this is the way you can express your apology. Expressing regret, accepting responsibility, making restitution, genuinely repenting, and requesting for forgiveness. If you can trace what are the 3 languages that Shaul spoke here. Verse 22, here is the king's spear. David said, let one of your young men come over and get it. I'm not going there. You pick it up here. But he kept the water jug. Maybe because he wanted to remind Shaul, you don't do this ever again. The Lord rewards everyone for their righteousness and faithfulness. This is a lesson for all of us. And David is reminding Shaul about this. The Lord delivered you into my hands today, and I will not lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. I will never kill you. I will never harm you. As surely as I valued your life today, so may the Lord value my life and deliver me from all my trouble. So David accepted Shaul's confession by returning the spear. Again, he kept the jar as a reminder of Shaul. This happened for the second time. This is probably the central verse 23. And this is wisdom for us. It's all about God. The Lord rewards, the Lord delivered. And you are the Lord's anointed. It's all about God. This is not just a military conflict. It's all about God. He delivered Shaul to David, but instructed him not to kill the king. And he will also reward the righteous and implicitly punish the evil. So David was expecting the Lord to bless him for his faithfulness. And he's telling Shaul, you have to be faithful to the Lord for the Lord to bless you. Now, in verse 24, David entrusted his own security in the hands of God as he passed the test. He didn't harm Shaul. He valued the life of Shaul. He didn't kill him. And this is the lesson for all of the succeeding kings of Israel and Judah. Because in the northern kingdom of Israel, they didn't value the life of their kings. All right? And of course, for us, value the life of your opponent. We don't war against flesh and blood. All right? The Lord was sovereign throughout the incident. David was righteous and Shaul was not. Last verse, then Shaul said to David, may you be blessed, David, my son. You will do great things and surely triumph. So David went on his way and Shaul returned home. So similar on how the story ended in chapter 24, here in chapter 26, it also ended in a peaceful manner. So Shaul spoke the last words. You have the last words, okay? And he blessed David. Some of us, we don't want the others to have the last word. We want to have the last words. He acknowledged his greatness and bright future, and that's good enough for David. They parted ways without any incident. So this would be the last time David and Shaul would see each other in person. They would never see each other again. So what we can see here is that God has sovereign control over all. Even though Shaul wanted to kill David, God intervened. God let David penetrate the camp and escape from it and put evil to stop. He lets evil people work, but he frustrates their plans to protect the righteous and to fulfill his plan for the kingdom of Israel. Now, this is very important for the readers of 1 Samuel, especially for the people of Israel, because it could be possibly an issue between Shaul and David. Okay, Shaul was getting worse. So the author is making sure that you understand Shaul didn't deserve to be a king anymore. He deserved to be replaced. He tried to kill the future king, while David was righteous, deserving to be the next king. He did not try to kill Shaul. That's the model that we have today in dealing with conflicts, whether this is political or not. Okay? When an old problem returns, God can test you with previously resolved problems. You must be brave and smart if you take the challenge. You can confront your opponents with convicting words. Don't be violent. And accept confession, offer peace, and glorify God in all of these.